Joining us now is Mike Davis, who is outside of the United States Supreme Court, maybe waiting for, are they going to drop the decision on the day of the debate? It would be gutsy. Mike Davis, how are we doing? What are we expecting soon from the Supreme Court?
Well, the Supreme Court just announced another opinion day on Monday, which is unusual that they're going into July. It's been several years since they've done that. I think going back to 2021 that they haven't gotten their opinions out by the end of June. But there are still quite a few cases that the Supreme Court must decide, including the crucial case of whether the President of the United States, any President of the United States, is immune from criminal prosecution for his official acts, not his personal acts, his official acts. And if the Supreme Court does not get this right, you're going to have presidents indicting their predecessors for what they did as the President of the United States. You're going to destroy the country in the process. So I think the Supreme Court understands that, and they're going to rule in Trump's favor in that case. You also have the Fisher case, the January 6th case, that the Supreme Court must decide, where the Biden Justice Department has contorted a post-Enron federal obstruction of justice statute intended to go after corporate fraud that Biden and Garland and Matthew Graves and Jack Smith have used to go after Trump and his supporters on January 6th. They have been persecuted. The Supreme Court appears to be on the cusp of reversing those criminal convictions under this post-Enron obstruction of justice statute. Just today, the Supreme Court issued a critically important ruling on the separation of powers and on the administrative state. The Chief Justice, in a 6-3 opinion, said that the Securities and Exchange Commission can't have employees, administrative law judges, as they say, decide these cases as judges. That is something that federal judges must do, and these people who have matters when they have enforcement matters, it has to be through judges and juries, not through unelected bureaucrats and the Securities and Exchange Commission. That is going to be a powerful opinion, because there are a lot of three-letter agencies in Washington, D.C. who think they're independent. Even though they're part of the executive branch, they don't think they report to the President of the United States. And then they have lawmaking authority, they have the power to enforce their own laws, and they have the power to interpret and adjudicate their own laws. That's the very definition of tyranny. And the Supreme Court is starting to roll back this decades-long unconstitutional process in the federal government.
So Mike, help me understand this. So people are saying that John Roberts is going to be the author of the Trump immunity case. Is that a bad sign?
It seems like he would be seems like he would be the author, but it seems like that would actually be a good sign, because that means that the Chief Justice is in the camp with the other conservatives. I think the opinion could be 5 or 6 in the majority. You might have Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing a separate opinion, maybe a concurring opinion, and then the 3 liberal justices writing a scathing dissent. But I would say this to those 3 liberal justices: if Biden can get away with indicting Trump for his official acts, like, for example, contemplating firing the acting attorney general after the election, does that mean the Trump 47 Justice Department can prosecute President Obama for his extrajudicial drone strike on 2 American citizens, including a minor? Does that mean President Trump's Justice Department can prosecute President Biden for his illegal mass parole of millions of illegal immigrants into this country and the resulting rapes, kidnappings, murders, and other violent crimes? Does that mean the Trump 47 Justice Department can prosecute George W. Bush for lying about weapons of mass destruction and the resulting war and deaths of millions of people? Do they really want to go down this path? I don't think so. And I think the Supreme Court understands, if you don't find that presidents are immune from criminal prosecution for their official acts, like they've been immune for the last 40 years from civil prosecution, you're going to destroy the presidency and therefore you're going to destroy the country. And I think that very much resonates with the Chief Justice and Justice Kavanaugh.
So the left will lose their mind over this. How much of Jack Smith's case would then be dismissed based on presidential immunity? Not all of it. The documents case in particular. Help me understand.
Well, so it would be whatever President Trump did in his official capacity as the president of the United States, and this would affect all of these criminal prosecutions against Trump. It doesn't mean the whole case goes away. It just means that these cases would get sent back. In the D.C. January 6th case, it would get sent back to D.C. Obama Judge Tanya Chutkan, who stupidly before just blanketly held that the president could be prosecuted for his official acts, and then two partisan Democrats on the D.C. circuit and a washed-up Republican went along with that. They're all going to get reversed, as they should. D.C. Obama Judge Tanya Chutkan is going to have to hold an evidentiary hearing, a mini trial, to figure out what did Jack Smith allege that President Trump did in his official capacity, like, for example, contemplating firing the acting attorney general. A private citizen can't do that. Only the president can do that, versus what did he do in his personal capacity where he could be subject to criminal prosecution. And then that decision, however she decides, if she screws it up again because she's a moron, then it gets appealed again to the D.C. circuits, and they have to decide, and then that gets appealed again to the Supreme Court. So the bottom line is it doesn't look like this January 6th case in D.C., who the Democrats thought that was their silver bullet to go after Trump and take him out for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and the First Amendment. But the Democrats thought they would have this Biden partisan Jack Smith and this Obama partisan Tanya Chutkan with Trump in trial right now and then heading to prison. Instead, Trump's on the campaign trail and he's heading back to the White House.
Yeah, and so, Mike, I certainly hope so. Help me understand on this separation of powers issue. This is a big one. What would that then mean for a second Trump term as far as giving the ability to control the administrative state? And spend a little bit of time on this. Spend a couple minutes, please, Mike. The administrative state is a post-constitutional and largely unconstitutional legal creation. Please explain to our audience.
Yes. So the Constitution is a loan agreement between we, the people, and our governments, the federal, state, and tribal governments. We escaped from England. We escaped from the crown, where power comes from God to the king and then is lent to the subjects through decrees like the Magna Carta. In the United States, it's the opposite. Power comes from God to us as the sovereign people instead of a sovereign crown, and we lend power to governments. It is a radically different concept from England and Europe and the rest of the world, especially at the time. And so if we did not lend the federal government power specifically enumerated in the Constitution, it belongs to the states and we the people. The 10th Circuit confirms that. We were supposed to give the federal government very limited, specific, and divided power. So Congress has legislative power, the president has the power to execute, and the judiciary has the power to decide cases and controversies, the judicial power. What has happened with the administrative state is the federal government has assumed all power from the states and from the people. Power, they're not supposed to have. That started after FDR. And then we've created these administrative agencies that are part of the executive branch, but they pretend like they are independent of the president of the United States. It used to be you couldn't fire them, right? And so then what happened is these agencies, not only do they grab all power that the federal government doesn't have, they grab judicial power, they grab legislative power, and then they grab the president's executive power. And so over the next 20 years, what you're going to see are these constitutionalist judges, thanks to President Trump, who transformed the Supreme Court and the lower federal courts, where they're going to start rolling back the federal government. They're going to start rolling back this federal power, and they're especially going to take away the power from these agencies that think that they're independent. We saw that with a major decision today